Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah look emaciated. James, my husband, who had just returned from an overseas assignment, yelled at me as soon as he got home. What do you mean? I was shocked and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah emaciated? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I hadn't borrowed any money from David. They were fine just a few months ago. It's unlikely for them to become so thin so suddenly. James completely believed David's words and treated me as the bad person. I couldn't let myself or James be manipulated by David any longer. That's the only thing I couldn't tolerate. I had to expose David and Sarah's wrongdoing. I'm Amanda, 61 years old. I work part-time at a local bakery. I've been living alone for the last few years. James, my husband, was assigned overseas. He's now over 60 and works for a construction company, still working hard as a site supervisor. For the past few years, he's been guiding and assisting locals in developing countries and building large commercial facilities. Although I was worried about his first overseas assignment, he seems to enjoy it, getting along well with the cheerful locals. James sends me $2,000 every month for living expenses, so I've been living comfortably on my own. We have a son, David, who also works for a construction company like James. He married Sarah 3 years ago and lives in an apartment nearby. Neighbors say it's nice to have a son close by, but that's not really the case. Since getting married, he hardly ever visits. David left home during his rebellious years, and we haven't been in much contact since. I hoped things would change once he got married and moved nearby, but they didn't. However, it's common to hear that boys don't keep in touch much, so I resigned myself to it. Then one day, David and Sarah suddenly came to my house. We have a favor to ask. What's going on? Well, we need to borrow some money. Money? Why? I raised my voice, fearing the worst, like debt. David and Sarah looked apologetic and shrugged. We're thinking of starting infertility treatments. Infertility treatments? Yeah, it's been 3 years since we got married and we haven't had a child yet. We thought it's time to consider it. That's true. But Sarah, you're still in your 20s. Isn't it too early to worry? Sarah responded anxiously.
It's physically challenging if it's too late, and just because we start treatments doesn't mean we'll have a child right away.
That's a good point. I've heard it can take years. I had no idea they were seriously struggling with this. The thing is, infertility treatments are quite expensive. Sarah works at a grocery store, but honestly, it's tough. I had heard about infertility treatments on TV. It's a difficult journey that requires a lot of time and money, as I heard from those who've been through it. I wanted to see my grandchild and help my son David if he was in trouble. So I nodded in agreement to David and Sarah's request. I understand. I'll support you both as much as I can. But how much do you need? Actually, we need about $2,500 a month. $2,500 a month? It was not a small amount for me. It was more than what James sends me every month. However, with my savings and part-time job, it wasn't an impossible amount. We'll definitely pay you back, please. I've always had a soft spot for David's requests. David was finally reaching out to me. Being there for him is what a parent does. All right, I'll deposit it into your bank account each month, okay, David? That would help a lot. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Amanda.
David and Sarah left looking happy. Upon reflection, I had one question. Was $2,500 a month really necessary for infertility treatments? Yet, considering additional expenses like diet and medical visits, I thought it might be necessary. 6 months later, the monthly payment of $2,500 to David were not easy. While I could manage with James's remittances and my part-time income, I had to be more frugal than before. So I went shopping at a discount grocery store a bit far from home. On my way back, passing a casino, I spotted two familiar faces. David and Sarah? David and Sarah were entering that casino. Could it be a mistake? Curious, I decided to follow them. I went inside and looked for them. The place was crowded, and just as I was about to give up, I spotted David exiting the restroom. I followed them from a distance unnoticed. David and Sarah were excitedly discussing something. They sat at a table and started playing. There was David, a side I had never seen before. The game ended quick. David and Sarah seemed upset, probably having lost. I doubted whether they were really undergoing infertility treatments. They should be using their money for treatment, not gambling. They should have managed their finances before borrowing from me. Wanting to confront them, I approached as they left the casino. David, Sarah, can we talk for a moment? What, Mom? They turned around, surprised, their faces strained. What's this? You have money to gamble? Well, we just came to relax a bit. Relax? You seemed quite experienced, though. Oh, I used to come here with friends during college. College, huh? The more I heard, the more suspicious it seemed. So you don't usually gamble? No, we're just stressed, thinking about infertility treatments. That must be tough. But you seem quite knowledgeable. Is it really your first time since college? David began to fidget irritably under my questioning. Are you doubting me? It's not that, but it's shocking to see you coming out of a casino when you said you couldn't afford treatments. I haven't heard much about the treatment either. Oh, you're so annoying. David scratched his head and sighed exaggeratedly. Shut up. All that infertility treatment talk was a lie. So all the money so far went to gambling? Obviously. If we hit it big, we'll be billionaires. It's stupid not to try such a dream. David and Sarah showed no remorse for deceiving me, laughing mockingly. I felt betrayed after worrying so much for David. I was ready to do anything for him, but he exploited my feelings. Well, then, you won't be needing any more money from me. What are you talking about? If you're not undergoing treatments, you don't need it, right? Well, don't expect a penny from us when we become billionaires. David crossed his arms and looked down on me. Sarah continued with a smug smile.
By the way, we've already spent all the money you gave us, so there's none left. We can't pay it back.
Too bad for you. David and Sarah said mockingly, then turned their backs and left without another word. I was speechless with astonishment. Despite having transferred about $10,000 to them over the past few months, this was their attitude. If I let them continue their reckless behavior, it would lead to irreparable consequences. That's why I decided to stop sending money to David. 2 months later, James was returning home temporarily. I prepared his favorite soup and pasta, waiting for him. As soon as he arrived, James burst out. Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah looked malnutritioned. What do you mean? I was stunned and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah malnutritioned? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me, saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I can't believe you. Aren't you ashamed as a parent? I've been sending enough money so you wouldn't have financial troubles, and yet you're borrowing money from our son. What are you doing? James was furious, blaming me for everything. However, I had never borrowed money from David. It was all a lie. I was shocked that James completely believed David's words and didn't trust me. But I couldn't let David and Sarah's lies continue. I decided to reveal everything to James. James, I understand you want to believe in David, but can you look at this? Bank statements, what about them? This is the money you've been sending me every month. What? You have plenty of money. James looked puzzled as he examined the statement. That's right, I'm not struggling for money, and look here. Did you send money to David? Yes, until recently I was sending David $2,500 every month. That much? Were you okay with your living expenses? Relieved that James had calmed down, I continued. I managed with my part-time job and savings. I had saved quite a bit. Looking at the remaining balance, he could see I hadn't wasted money. Then why give David money? He said they wanted to start infertility treatments. Infertility treatments? Yes, they've been married for 3 years without a child, so they asked for money for treatments. That's why I lent money to them. James was surprised, having not heard about the treatments. David and Sarah claimed to my husband that they didn't have enough money to live because of me. So why did you stop the payments? It was all a lie. They weren't going to the clinic. Then where did the money go? This is it. The casino they went to happened to be on TV. It showed people mingling. You don't mean they used the money for gambling? They lied to try and get money from me too? James stared in disbelief at the TV. That's when it happened. Hey, isn't that David and Sarah? Oh my gosh, it is. I never thought they would ever go back. David and Sarah appeared on the screen. I thought they would restrain themselves after I stopped the payments, but they couldn't quit gambling. Unbelievable. The photos they sent me showed them looking so thin. They haven't changed at all. Nowadays, you can edit photos with apps, you know. James, realizing he had been deceived, hung his head in dismay. Maybe his return home was also for David and Sarah's sake. After a moment of shock, James looked up, determined. Unacceptable. I need to have a serious talk with them. Saying that, he headed for the door. Where are you going? To David's house, of course. I'm going to confront them. In a rage, James was about to leave for David's house, but I quickly stopped him. It's pointless to go now. Why? They're at the casino and won't be back until evening. Plus, if you're going, you need to be prepared. I smiled at James. It was time to prepare something special that I had kept hidden until now. In the evening, when we thought David and Sarah would be home by now, James and I headed to David's house. When James rang the doorbell, David and Sarah appeared, looking flustered. What? Why's Dad here? Aren't you supposed to be overseas? I heard you two were in trouble, so I came back. You both seem quite well, though. Contrary to the photos James had shown me, David and Sarah looked perfectly healthy but strained. Struggling for food and money, right? Are you okay now? Yeah, some colleagues at my work have been helping us out. I see. You've been lending money to Mom, right? How much did you lend her? Well, that's... Pressed by James, David glanced at me. He scratched his head and said, That's right, Mom owes me over $10,000, and she hasn't paid back a cent. What do you think, Dad? Terrible, right? Facing David's resolve to stick to his lies, I let go of any remaining affection. That's awful. Do you have any proof? No proof. I lent it to her because she's family, but she's not paying it back. David's fake tears were met with Sarah's concurrence.
We're struggling too, so we told her we couldn't lend her more money. She got angry, saying we're family but won't help.
Is that true, Amanda? I did lend money, but I never borrowed any. Assertively denying their claims, David and Sarah's protest grew louder. Lies! She's deceiving you, Dad.
Don't believe Amanda.
James looked at them coldly, clearly fed up. I had no time for their charade. To end this, I took out the evidence from my bag. Look at this, my bank statements and the promissory notes I had them write when lending money. That's a lie, David stammered, trying to grab the evidence from me, but I handed it all to James. In fact, I showed them all at home, but James reacts as if he's seeing them for the first time. What's this? You borrowed money from Mom? That's not what I heard. There's a reason for that. What's the reason? David stiffened as James's voice grew colder. James, always strict, must have instilled fear in him. Sweating profusely, David struggled for words. It was for gambling money, right? What are you talking about, Mom? That's ridiculous. Really, but you were on TV today. What? I showed them photos from my phone. I recorded a snippet of the show on my phone. David and Sarah appeared several times, wearing the same clothes as they were right now. Their faces turned pale at the photos. That must be someone else who looks similar. This isn't proof.
You can't tell if it's us from that.
Ignoring their denial, I presented several more photos. The photos contained pictures of him going in and out of the casino. Actually, I hired a detective to follow you, David, Sarah. They found out you've been going to the casino several times a month. What's this? They were speechless at the photos and investigation report. Also, the lie about infertility treatments. You haven't visited any clinic for months. Got anything to say? Realizing there was no escape, David sighed and feigned nonchalance. I thought you'd be easy to deceive, Dad. What did you say? I laughed so hard when you called in panic because of my email. If I knew it was this easy, I should have asked for money from you from the start, Dad. David's mocking laughter made James clench his fists on his lap. Did you enjoy deceiving me and your mom? Oh, it was hilarious. If only Mom hadn't been so perceptive. We wanted to win more.
Really, we could have earned so much more.
David and Sarah showed no remorse. Stop mocking your parents. Do you even realize you're doing something wrong? What? Borrowing and lending money within the family is fine, isn't it? Don't sweat the small stuff. Borrowing money? You don't even repay what you owe. Shut up. It's natural for parents to financially support their children, right? Don't make a big deal out of it. David seemed to think it's okay to do anything because we're family. But reality isn't that forgiving. I decided to confront David with the harsh truth. Listen, even within a family, lying to borrow money can be considered fraud, you know. Fraud? Yes, you tricked me out of money. I'm consulting a lawyer, so you might hear from the court soon. The mention of court panicked David, so I pressed on. The lawyer says there's a potential for fraud charges because the promissory note says it's for infertility treatments, but you never went for any. Then let's sue. David stood up as James spoke calmly. Wait, sue your own son? Are you really that heartless? What? You swindled money from us, and you're saying that? I know what I did was wrong, but wait on suing, please. Then will you repay us? Silence fell over David. It seemed he lost at betting again today. I don't have any cash on hand right now. I'm really struggling for money. I know. The detective said you might be in debt. So you're in debt. Having a hard time repaying. That's why you can't pay us back anytime soon. I squeezed David's hand, feigning sympathy. How sad. We didn't realize you were suffering so much. Sorry. Yeah, as parents, we should have paid more attention. We need to guide you to the right path from now on. James gently patted David's back. Mom, Dad. David's voice was pitiful. We smiled at him. First, admit your wrongdoing and repay the money. That's important. Why does it have to be that way? Borrowing means repaying. Teaching you the right thing to do is our duty as parents. We resolved to provide no further financial support. It's time for them to manage on their own, like adults. Come on. David and Sarah were visibly disappointed. Eventually, they were ordered to repay all the money they borrowed from us. James, of course, also cut off all financial support for David to prevent further gambling addiction. It's our duty as parents to guide them onto the right path. David and Sarah started working longer hours to repay their debts. Too busy to even think about gambling, they were considerably thinner. Sarah wanted to divorce to escape the debt, but David refused. With no money to hire a lawyer, they couldn't even afford a divorce and continued their married life. Despite their apologies, I had no intention of forgiving them. Adults must pay for their mistakes. A few months later, James finished his overseas job and officially retired. Having working non-stop, James had many things he wanted to do in retirement and recently got into camping. We went camping by a lake the other day. We really enjoyed our time together for the first time in a long time. With the money James had sent me and his retirement funds, we weren't financially troubled. We planned to spend our remaining years leisurely, just the two of us.
We headed to the reception hall, the excitement of the ceremony. But an unexpected problem happened. There was a seat for my husband, but not for me. I looked several times but couldn't find it. Then, Mary came over to me. "What's wrong?" "Oh, Mary, you came at just the right time. There's no seat for me somehow." Mary then said, half smiling, Somehow? There's no way. There was never a seat for you in the first place. Huh? I couldn't believe my ears. What do you mean? My name is Sharon, a 34-year-old housewife. I've been married to Peter for 7 years. We've never had children, but last year I gave birth, finally. She's a very cute girl. Giving birth was hard, but my first daughter is just so precious. Peter also loves our daughter and comes home at a fixed time every day. Peter is cooperative with parenting, and it's a great help. Sis, give this to my niece. Oh, Noel, are you here again? But my niece, it's just too cute. Noel, my younger brother, who often visits our home, says, "There's a 5-year age gap between Noel and me. We have no other relatives since our parents are no longer with us. Our parents divorced when we were young. Our father had a bad drinking habit, and he would often become violent towards our mother. Our mother decided to divorce as she felt staying together would harm the kids. She took us in, but raising 2 children alone was hard, and she had 2 jobs to support us. Thanks to her, Noel and I are now able to make a living as adults. But our mother must have worked too much. She passed away from cancer about 5 years ago. Yet I believe she was at ease knowing that both of her children were working as employees. I'm truly glad I was able to show myself to my mother in my wedding dress. We'd always lived while supporting each other. Our bonds as a family were very strong. My brother and I vowed to live our lives as happily as possible for our mother. Living day by day in this manner, I'm very happy now." Oh, what a lovely apron, right? I do have good taste, don't I? Don't be so cheeky. Don't you have anything else to do on the weekend? Go on a date or something? I teased my brother jokingly, but an unexpected answer came back. Actually, the reason I came today is that I wanted to tell you something. Huh? Report? Yeah, I have someone I'm considering marrying. What? I was surprised. I've never expected this from my brother. It was totally unexpected. Can I come over next Saturday to introduce her to you and Peter? Of course you can. I'll check Peter's schedule too. Yeah, thanks. After my brother left, I felt quite emotional. I always took care of my brother at home while our mother was working, so the feeling was closer to being a guardian rather than a sister. It's such a big event for me that my precious brother would come to tell me about his wedding. I can't wait for Saturday. And since my husband has the day off, we'll meet them together. On that day, I was restless, wondering when they would arrive. Sharon, you've been so fidgety since a while ago, but Noel is bringing his fiancé over, right? It makes me nervous. Don't worry, Sharon. I bet Noel isn't expecting his sister to be nervous. Well, maybe, but as we were having that conversation, the doorbell rang. My brother and his fiancée arrived about 5 minutes later than planned. I could feel my heartbeat speed up. When I opened the door, there was a beautiful woman standing next to my brother. Hey, sis. Welcome. Why are you so nervous, sis? Who, me? I'm not nervous. As I was having this conversation with my brother, I locked eyes with the woman he had brought along. She politely introduced herself. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary. I'm Sharon, Noel's sister. After a brief greeting, I led the 2 of them into the living room. My husband, who had been waiting in the living room, greeted the 2. I'll make some tea. Oh, we brought some sweets. Let's all have some. Oh, thank you. I'll prepare the tea with them. Once I had finished preparing it for everyone, we sat down at the dining table and started talking. Mary was very beautiful and decent. Just like me, she seemed a bit nervous, looking around restlessly. So, where did you 2 meet? Through work. Mary was working as a receptionist at a client's office that I was working with. My brother and Mary said this, looking slightly blushed. My husband said, not only managing negotiations, but also bringing a fiancé? Good work. Hey, Peter. That's one way to put it. My brother quickly interjected. I burst out laughing, and Mary was also laughing. Thanks to my husband, the slightly tense atmosphere immediately became more relaxed. By the way, Mary, how old are you? I turned 24 this year. Oh, I see. So she's 5 years younger than Noel, which means she's a full decade younger than me. So, are you planning on continuing work after getting married? No. I'm going to quit. Oh, really? Many women these days prefer to continue working after marriage. That's unusual. I don't need to work that much. Noel works at a major company and my family is quite wealthy. Gradually, her true personality was showing, which was different from my first impression. Also, you're not working currently, are you? No, I quit after giving birth to my daughter, but I was in the company for about 15 years. What? 15 years? How old are you now? I'm 34. Wait, so are you by any chance a high school graduate? Suddenly, Mary's expression hardened. Well, yes I am. Oh, a high school graduate. She definitely sounded condescending. But then Noel quickly came to my defense. Sharon started working right after high school for me. We talked about it, right? We were poor, so Sharon gave up everything for me. Don't look down on her. I wasn't looking down on her, I was just surprised, because there's no one like that around me. Noel's defense had created an awkward atmosphere. I quickly tried to smooth things over by saying, "It must be unusual for you, Mary." Mary also added, "Yes, exactly. I didn't mean it in a bad way, I was just surprised." Noel seemed to accept this and replied, "Oh, okay, as long as that's the case." To change the subject, I asked, "Mary, what does your father do?" "My dad is the editor-in-chief of a publishing company called XX." Mary proudly stated this. Wait, that publishing company? I noticed something, but I didn't want to bring it up and cause another weird reaction from Mary, so I decided not to mention it for now. Mary seems to take pride in the fact that her father earns a good income, and she brags about it. When talking about her father or her home, she looks really happy, even smug. I even thought that her nose had grown a few inches longer than when she first arrived at our house. Anyway, that's how the meeting to announce my brother's engagement ended. After seeing off Noel and Mary, I immediately slumped onto the sofa. Phew, I'm exhausted. You did well. I'll make some coffee. My husband said this as he comforted our daughter in his arms. Thank you. But I wonder if Noel's going to be okay. He said this as he moved our daughter to the crib. Huh? Because Mary seems difficult and she was mocking you. I hope they're okay. Well, Noel did quickly point that out, so maybe that part will be okay. Although I said that, I was also a little worried. Noel and Mary had grown up in very different environments, so their values must be quite different. No matter how successful Noel is, the different background could cause misunderstandings. But it's Noel's life, so he's the one who needs to make all the decisions. As his sister, all I can do is watch over him. After several months had passed, Noel and Mary came to visit our house. What brings you here all of a sudden? We wanted to give this to you today. What? What Noel handed over was an invitation to their wedding. Wow! You're finally holding the ceremony. We really want you to come. Of course, I'll be there. It's my dear brother's big day after all. As I was getting excited, Mary interjected. But you don't have any relatives to rely on, and you can't bring your baby to the wedding, can you? She could be worried, but from Mary's tone clearly implying, "Are you really coming?" Oh, don't worry about it. We'll leave her with my mother-in-law. When I said that, Mary seemed disappointed and murmured, "Is that so?" What's up, Mary? You seem down. Noel noticed. Mary suddenly changed her impression. Do I? I'm just tired. With a forced laugh. Yeah, it's been a rush trying to get everything done because our schedules didn't match. To ease their burden, I suggested, why don't you head home and rest? Thanks for the invitation. To be honest, I didn't want to spend more time with Mary, who clearly disliked me. But she's the woman Noel chose. So I refrained from voicing my objections about their marriage. When the day of the wedding arrived, my husband and I went to the venue. Noel looked so handsome walking with Mary. As I've always cared for him like a mother, I was moved to tears. Mom, look at how grown Noel is. I murmured in my heart, knowing our mom in heaven must be watching. She must be watching the ceremony, emotionally charged from heaven. We headed to the reception with the excitement of the ceremony. But there, we encountered an unexpected problem. While there was a seat for my husband, there wasn't one for me. I searched several times, but I couldn't find it. So I had to tell the venue staff. However, even after they checked, they confirmed that there was no seat for me. Isn't it strange that the groom's sister's husband has a seat, but the groom's sister doesn't? My husband asked the staff. They showed us the seating chart that Mary and Noel had given them. Just then, Mary came over. What's going on? Oh, Mary, good timing. There seems to be a mistake and I don't have a seat. Mary laughed and said, A mistake? There's no way. We didn't prepare a seat for you from the start. What? I couldn't believe what I heard. What do you mean? When I asked this, Mary's expression turned evil. When Noel is with you, he doesn't care about me, and he's spending all his money on his niece. Can't be. Noel buys things for our daughter, but they aren't expensive, and occasionally. That's not the point. Anyway, my happiness is diminished by you. Please leave. With that, Mary glared at me disdainfully. What a terrible woman she is. Is it possible for someone to act this horribly based on misunderstandings? I hate the fact that my dear brother is marrying a woman like this. Suddenly, a man rushed towards us, exclaiming, Hey, Mary, what are you doing? Huh? Dad, why are you so panicked? It was Mary's father. He also had connections with me. You didn't say something rude to this lady, did you? Huh? This lady? She's the annoying old hag interfering with my happy marriage. What? Apologize right now. What's with you, Dad? I had enough of their arguing, so I turned to Mary's father and bluntly stated my intentions. Editor-in-Chief, I want to conclude my column with this week's issue. I deeply apologize. She was disrespectful. We'll do anything, please. Don't quit. Mary's father apologized profusely. Seeing this, Mary was left in shock. I was into beauty after successfully losing weight, and I've been writing about it on social media. Recently, I shared about post-maternity self-care that you can do at home. This made me popular. I make a decent income. I've been writing an article on a magazine which he works for as a chief editor. Thankfully, the magazine's sales had increased, thanks to me. And I had been continuously writing. I had no idea that Sharon's younger brother was my daughter's fiancé. Oh, you didn't come to the family gathering, did you? You said there was no need for just a sister. I deeply apologize. If I had known it was you, Sharon. You don't realize that your words only emphasize your bad character, do you? Silenced by my words, Mary's father could only stand there, dumbstruck. Anyway, I'd like to formally discuss my column with your company later. Goodbye. Having said that, I left the venue. My husband also left with me, saying that if I wasn't attending, he wouldn't either. Suddenly, my brother Noel came rushing over. Wait! Why are you guys trying to leave? I explained everything to him. What? That can't be. When I was at home, I saw a seating chart with Mary, and your name's on it. I see. So it seems like Mary had shown a fake seating chart to Noel. Realizing this, Noel, his face flushed, stormed into the reception hall. He called off the engagement, stating, I can't marry a person who treats my sister so poorly. And Noel really wasn't scattering money for his niece. It was Mary who spent a lot. She would buy anything, therefore it seemed she was financially strained. On top of that, the wedding was quite extravagant, so handling the finances was a struggle. Being blamed for spending money on his niece wasn't a pleasant situation at all. After all, wasn't all of this Mary's fault? Noel explained to the attendees that it would be just a regular dinner, and then he left. Later, there were issues regarding the wedding costs, but I cooperated with Noel to resolve them. As Noel had proposed the breakup, he ended up in a disadvantageous situation. But originally, it was Mary's fault. Unconvinced, I decided to use my power a little. I told Mary's father that if he agreed to pay all costs, I would continue the contract. Mary's father agreed without hesitation, saying, Understood. Mary seemed unconvinced. But her father snapped, It's all because of you, and forcibly made her accept it. This way, Noel was able to break up with Mary without any loss or a negative mark against him. Meanwhile, I continued the contract as promised. However, I did report this incident to the publisher. After that, Mary's father was transferred to a different department and no longer as editor-in-chief. Mary was disowned by her father, saying, "It's all your fault," and was forced out of the house. She had no access to money, but still she couldn't shake off her previous spending habits. She's likely to ruin herself, but it's none of my business, and she brought this on herself. Even Noel said, "Next time, I'll find someone who values you as my sister." I told him, "Just find someone who doesn't treat people poorly." Noel laughed. True. Mary was just abnormal while he was comforting his niece. I'm glad that the problem was resolved safely. I hope Noel finds a good person next time. Wishing for Noel's happiness, I'll continue to work hard for my husband and daughter at home.
What's the point of a husband who won't stand up for his wife? My daughter was being bullied by her mother-in-law, and her husband, my son-in-law, wouldn't even defend her. Instead, he said, "Mother-in-law, this is just part of her education as a wife. If you don't like it, take her back home." So I did just that. I brought my daughter back home with me. I'm a 50-year-old woman named Susie. I live with my only daughter, Maureen. My husband passed away in a car accident when I was young, and Maureen was in kindergarten. Since then, I've raised her on my own. I won't lie. It's been tough. I'm sure there were many days when she felt lonely or upset. But she graduated high school and went on to college. After college, she got a job and became a working adult. Maureen works for a well-established local company that runs various businesses like a bakery, a pharmacy, and real estate. It's a solid company. About a year ago, after working there for 3 years, Maureen told me she had a boyfriend. He was a polite and quiet young man, a sales rep from one of their clients. I was hopeful that he would be a good match for my outgoing daughter, Maureen. "Mom, I've decided to marry Ricky." She told me this with a smile about 3 months ago. I was thrilled that she had finally found happiness and celebrated grandly. We went all out for the wedding and the housewarming. At first, Maureen seemed ecstatic, but as time passed, she sounded less and less cheerful, and it became harder to get in touch with her. I thought it was just typical post-wedding blues, so I decided to wait for her to reach out. Maureen's an adult. It's not my place to meddle, I thought. But I was wrong. "Hey, Maureen looks really worn out. That's not just wedding blues. Are you sure she's okay?" My friend Karen, who lives near Maureen, told me this. "What do you mean?" "Her complexion is terrible. I asked if she was pregnant, but she said no. She looked really sad. Have you heard anything?" Karen's tone was somewhat accusatory. "I haven't been able to reach her lately. She's not answering her phone. You should try contacting her again." Encouraged by Karen's insistence, I called Maureen once more. "Hello, Maureen. It's Mom. Just checking in on you." Maureen answered, but there was only silence. "Maureen, can you hear me? Are you okay?" "Mom, I..." Maureen broke down crying on the phone. "Maureen, are you okay?" "Mom, I'm not okay." Hearing that Maureen wasn't doing well, I regretted not visiting her sooner. I've been so wrapped up in work that I've neglected her, but Maureen always put on a brave face for me, always cheerful. Now she's in tears, saying she's not okay. I held back my emotions and rushed to Maureen's side. "Maureen, Mom's here." "Mom, When I saw Maureen, she looked worn out, a shadow of herself from just a few months ago. "What happened to you?" I hugged Maureen and rubbed her back. Seemingly relieved, Maureen began to speak through her tears and sobs. "Ricky's parents are bullying me. They say I'm uncivilized because I was raised by a single mom, so they're disciplining me." I looked at Maureen's hands. Her once beautiful fingertips were now cracked and sore. "This is terrible." "They tell me to wash dishes with cold water to save hot water. They even tell me to hand wash clothes before using the washing machine." "What?" Apparently, her mother-in-law insists that Maureen hand wash her clothes as a pre-wash. "And I have to mop the floor every morning." Fuming, Maureen added, "What hurts the most is when they badmouth you, Mom." She burst into tears. I was livid and yelled at Ricky's parents. "What are you doing to my daughter?" Ricky's parents came out from the living room. "What's going on?" "Who do you think you are, making a scene in our home?" "You're bullying my daughter under the guise of discipline." They retorted, "This is why we can't deal with women from single-parent homes." "We're just disciplining an uncivilized girl. Your attitude is unacceptable." They began to mock us. "What's going on?" Ricky came out after hearing the commotion. "Ricky, your wife is so flawed that we're disciplining her, and her unreasonable mother is making a fuss." Ricky's mom reported to him as if tattling. I confronted Ricky. "If you're her husband, don't just stand there. Help Maureen." "You're misunderstanding. Maureen is failing as a wife. My parents are just trying to make her presentable." Ricky arrogantly defended his parents. "You're a failure as a husband. If you can't protect your own wife, stop this nonsense." I was furious and lunged at Ricky. Ricky retorted, "You're taking advantage of my parents' kindness. I did you a favor by marrying a woman from a single-parent home. If you have a problem, take her back with you." With that, he shook off my hand. I lost my balance and fell at the entrance. "Mom, are you okay?" Maureen rushed to my side. "I'm fine, Maureen. You don't need to stay here any longer. Get a divorce." When I urged Maureen to divorce, she weakly nodded. "Okay, I understand." As we were about to leave, Ricky's parents sneered. "You're probably going back to some rundown apartment. Feel free to come back any time." "Yeah, but only if you apologize deeply." Ricky's parents took turns mocking us. I quickly retorted, "You're the ones who don't get it. This house isn't yours. Don't get it twisted." "What are you talking about? This house was inherited by Maureen from her grandfather, right? What's hers is mine." Ricky insisted it was his, refusing to listen. Actually, inherited property doesn't automatically become the spouse's. That's the law. I pulled out a piece of paper from my bag and showed it to them. It was a copy of the land registry for the house, proving that I was the legal owner. My father, Maureen's grandfather, left this house to me, not directly to Maureen. I've been the one paying the taxes. Ricky and his parents were dumbfounded. I calmly explained that I had gifted them the house as a wedding present, free of rent and taxes. "What? I've never heard about this, Ricky." "I don't know. She's probably bluffing." Ricky and his parents refused to believe us. "Listen, you have no right to live here. If you understand, leave." Despite my declaration, they remained defiant. "That's your problem. We're staying. You're the one who should leave." "Fine. I'll see you in court," I said, taking Maureen with me as we left the house. As we exited, I noticed neighbors gathered, whispering among themselves after hearing the commotion. Among them was my friend Karen. "Are you okay?" "Sorry for causing a scene." Karen looked concerned. "I'll explain everything later," I said, hugging Maureen as we left. After that, Ricky and his family tried to continue living in the house, but word had spread in the neighborhood. People had noticed Maureen's declining health since her marriage. When it became known that they had bullied Maureen, tried to kick her out, and even attempted to take over the house, they were shunned as a disgraceful family. Living in a small town, word travels fast. It didn't take long for us to hear about Ricky and his family situation through Karen. Their reputation had plummeted, and they were even told not to dispose of their trash at the community dump. "Apparently, they fled in the night," Karen told me, chuckling. Within a month of us leaving, Ricky had called my cell phone multiple times. "It's your fault we can't live there anymore, because of the harassment. Apologize now." "I'm not sure what you're talking about." I brushed him off. "Apologize to us, and we'll clear up the misunderstanding with the neighbors. Then we'll forgive you." He still seemed to think they'd done nothing wrong. I was so disgusted that I hung up. A week after the calls, Ricky and his family showed up at my house unannounced. They were stunned when they arrived. Yes, I live in one of the city's most luxurious high-rise apartments. In fact, my late husband ran a company, and I took over as CEO after his passing. Working hard for Maureen's sake, the company grew, and now I can afford to live in a high-rise. Upon discovering this, Ricky and his family immediately changed their tune. We're really sorry. We had no idea you were so well off, Ricky said, forcing a smile. Yes, it's our fault for not knowing better. If we'd known you lived here, we would have treated you differently, Ricky's mom added. So you're apologizing because I live here? I asked sarcastically. No, actually, we sold our house to live with Ricky and Maureen, but now we have nowhere to go, Ricky's mom continued. Yes, we wanted to provide a good home for our parents, so we proposed living together, Ricky added. We sold our house for that reason, and now we're stuck in a rundown apartment, Ricky's mom said, feigning tears. Mom, don't cry. So, can you help us out? Could you either give us some financial support or let us live in an empty room in this high-rise? Ricky shamelessly asked for assistance. I put on a smile and said, Remember what you did to my daughter? Even if you've forgotten, I never will. Please leave. What? You're abandoning your own family? Maureen, who had witnessed the whole thing, immediately called the police. The police arrived promptly, found the 3 people, and quickly sent them away. Turns out Maureen had consulted the police several times after her divorce, saying her ex-husband was stalking her, wanting to reconcile. Her ex's family continued to show up at her apartment complex, but the concierge handled it. They've been scraping by in a cheap, run-down 2-bedroom apartment ever since. They squandered the money from selling their house on new furniture during the move, leaving them with almost nothing. Ricky's parents can't adjust to a less luxurious lifestyle and continue to live recklessly. Their son Ricky is worn out from being exploited by his parents. Moreover, the reason for the divorce got out because he used to be a salesman who frequented Maureen's company. As a result, he's been banned from Maureen's company and lost a major client, derailing his career. Even Ricky's parents have started looking for work, realizing the gravity of the situation. But due to their age, skills, and neighborhood gossip, they're struggling to find employment. The jobs they do find don't pay well, and they continue to live in hardship. I decided it would be a waste to leave my father's house vacant, so I've opened it up as a community center for the neighborhood. I occasionally check in to make sure Ricky's family isn't causing trouble. Maureen told me, I'm an adult now, and I wanted to handle my husband myself. I didn't want to worry you, Mom. I've been telling her, it's not shameful to ask for help. The sooner you speak up, the less you'll suffer. So speak up sooner from now on. After the divorce, Maureen has been living in my high-rise apartment and continues to work at the company she's been with since before her marriage. She was downcast when she first came back home, but now she's back to her old self and helps around the house. We plan to live happily together for the foreseeable future.
You didn't hear me. A high school grad like you must be hard of hearing too. My kids deserve to be born to a much better woman. Education doesn't matter when it comes to love.
My husband used to say before we got married. Now he belittles me for only having a high school diploma, saying he's going to leave and remarry a woman with an elite college degree.
Ah, what a tragedy to end up with a low-educated woman like you. I'm truly unlucky.
With those bitter parting words, my husband eloped with a college-educated woman. My name is Abigail. I married James, who's 3 years older than me, at 25, and I'm turning 27 this year. I work as an administrative assistant at a trading company with only a high school diploma. We met through a mutual acquaintance from high school. My husband, unlike me, is an elite. He graduated from a prestigious university and works in sales for a big corporation. When we first met, I felt unworthy of his attention, but he kept saying,
Your degree doesn't matter. I like you for who you are.
So I believed him and we got married. Unfortunately, it turns out that was a mistake. The moment we got married, he started looking down on me for my education and salary. From his perspective, a high school educated woman working at a small trading company must seem inferior, but he's the one who wanted to marry me. During our dating days, he sensed my insecurities and reassured me with kind words. That man is nowhere to be found now.
You should really find a new job, Abigail. Having a wife who works for such a low-paying company is embarrassing.
He shamelessly tells me. But I don't want to work for a demanding company right now because we're trying to conceive. And I also like my current job and company. His cold gaze silences me, my voice gradually shrinking. He sighs as if annoyed and retreats to the bedroom before I can say anything else. He probably assumed we were going to talk about our stagnant efforts to conceive again. He was right. I was hoping for a real discussion with my husband about our struggle to have a baby. From the beginning of our marriage, I always wanted kids, and my husband even optimistically talked about having 3 siblings. But all that was talk in the early days of our marriage, and the reality is that there is no baby in sight. I'd subtly hint at my husband to start thinking about having kids, but he avoided the conversation saying,
I don't want to raise a kid born to a high school graduate.
His words left me stunned, and since then, we haven't really been able to talk face to face. Marriage had become a lonely affair. He'd belittle me every chance he got, reminding me to be grateful for being picked up by someone as elite as him, all while piling housework on me. And lately, he even stopped providing enough money for daily expenses. Apparently, according to him, I was bad with money and needed to save more. I had already cut corners wherever I could, even dipping into my savings from my single days when things got tough. You'd think I'd want a divorce by now, but fear held me back. The fear that he'd lash out if I brought it up. I was afraid to bring up divorce, worried that my husband would explode in anger. On top of that, I didn't want to betray my parents, who were so thrilled about our marriage and eagerly awaiting the birth of their first grandchild. As our marriage cooled off, my husband started spending less and less time at home. Coming home in the morning became the norm. If he came back drunk late at night, he'd wake me up to make him a snack. And whenever he came home late, I would always smell women's perfume on him. Even without a woman's intuition, it was clear. He was cheating. But I was too scared to confront the truth and kept procrastinating. Then, out of the blue, he said he was leaving.
My real love is finally pregnant, and I'm moving in with her tomorrow.
Stunned, I listened as he let out an exaggerated sigh.
Didn't you hear me? You're a high school grad with bad ears too. My exceptional genes are wasted on you.
He kept babbling about things I didn't even ask. Turns out, he was cheating on me with a younger woman who graduated from the same prestigious university as him. He said he was leaving me for her because she is now pregnant.
She's just starting her career, you see. Taking maternity leave right after joining a company would affect her career. Since I'm such a catch, I've had plenty of matchmaking offerings from my bosses. So I thought, why not marry someone for the time being?
That someone for the time being was apparently me. Maybe because there was no longer a need to hide. His face looked more grotesque than I had ever seen.
You work for a small trading company, right? I thought you might have some useful connections or something, but no. You have no valuable contacts and all you do is nag about having kids.
He stared at me intently after saying all this. Seeing me speechless, he snorted, stood up from the sofa, and muttered,
Ugh, what a tragedy. Marrying someone as uneducated as you. What a waste of my precious time.
He then walked out the front door without even sparing me a glance. I take deep breaths as I hear my husband lock the front door. My tense muscles, tightened by his overbearing demeanor, finally start to relax, and I break out in a cold sweat. Now that I know his schemes, there's no need to hesitate. I quickly finish my dinner that day and lock myself in my bedroom before he gets home. The next morning, I leave for work early and pick up divorce papers on my way. My hands are trembling with nervousness. I manage to unlock the front door. His shoes are gone. Not just the shoes. His favorite slippers and the sofa he loved in the living room are gone too. I search the entire house, fearing the worst. Sure enough, all of his stuff is missing. I haven't seen him since he left yesterday. I spot a bundle of papers carelessly placed on the table along with a flimsy envelope. I flip through the note, written in his meticulous angular handwriting, to find a filled-out divorce application. The note says to never contact him again, that he's already told his parents. I emotionlessly fill in the blanks on the divorce papers. Not a tear shed. Once finished, I pick up the envelope marked settlement money next to it. It's light, but inside there's $2,000. It must be intended as alimony for the divorce settlement. Though it's a meager amount, it can serve as a retainer for a lawyer to seek proper alimony later. I was planning to visit a law firm on my day off when my phone buzzed. It was my apartment manager, letting me know I owed rent for the past 2 months. They had tried to reach my husband but ended up calling me. My savings, already drained from covering our expenses, wouldn't make a dent. So I had no choice but to use the $2,000 in that envelope. At the law firm, they told me it would be tough to claim any more money. I had spent most of the cash my husband left on rent. Doing that, apparently, would make it look like I had accepted a divorce settlement. I had a responsibility for the rent too, as we shared a home. I figured my husband knew I was out of savings. He probably left that $2,000 as a way to wash his hands off me, and I had fallen right into his trap. I couldn't survive when most of my income went to rent, so I started working for cheaper places. Eventually, I returned to my parents' home after they learned of my divorce and urged me to come back. They insisted I was still young and encouraged me to find another partner, saying it wasn't too late to have kids. Returning home, my parents kept reminding me that I was still young, that I could find another person if I tried to date again, and that I was not too old to have children. I felt a sense of guilt for disappointing them with the divorce. While commuting to my job, now a bit far from home, I also started dating again. I packed my schedule faster than one might expect for someone who just got divorced, partly because keeping busy helped distract my mind. Perhaps I wanted to overwrite the nightmare of my previous marriage with a fulfilling daily life. My efforts paid off sooner than I had anticipated. Within 2 years after my divorce, I had remarried and given birth to a daughter. My new husband, Daniel, was the same age as me and also a high school graduate. After high school, he worked in an auto repair shop near my parents' house, and we met at a local singles mixer. Daniel was initially concerned about his educational level, but I assured him I wasn't like my ex, who judged people based on their credentials. Daniel, in turn, never looked down on me for my background. He was always generous and accepting. We built our new home close to my parents, and my days were filled with parenting and work. Life was busy, but happy. My thoughts of my ex-husband had long faded into oblivion. I unexpectedly ran into him about 10 years after our divorce. I was attending a Spanish speech and debate competition with my daughter.
"Is that you, Abigail?"
A man called out to me from behind. I turned around. Although he had aged, I immediately recognized the face, one I would rather not have seen. Next to my ex stood a young boy, about the same age as my daughter. Noticing my gaze, my ex-husband said with an unconcerned smile,
"This is my child, with Abby." She's an elite too. Graduated from a national university. The kid has the potential, and we're investing a lot in gifted education.
Abby must be the college-educated woman he ran off with. He takes the liberty to brag about how smart his own child is, regardless of my feelings. As I quietly let it slide, he quickly glances at my daughter.
So what about your husband? He's a high school grad too, isn't he? Knowing you?
What he says is true, but admitting my current husband is also a high school graduate will likely make his insults worse. Wanting to avoid trouble, I neither confirm nor deny and quickly try to leave the scene with my daughter.
No, I can tell the face of a kid who's a high school grad. They look as dumb as anyone else around. There's no way such a kid could speak fluent Spanish.
His insulting words, thrown at me even as he stepped in my way, left me stunned. In front of my child. He had no qualms about looking down on another child he had just met. I couldn't believe how nasty he was. Though my daughter might not understand what high school grad means, she probably sensed she was being spoken ill of. Seeing her face scrunch up as if she were about to cry, I stared fearlessly at my ex. Would you mind not insulting children? Aren't you ashamed as a father? He brushes off my anger nonchalantly.
Hey, I'm just telling the truth. It's presumptuous for a high school grad to enter a Spanish contest. Just play in the park where you belong.
Having said his piece, my ex-husband grabs his child's hand and vanishes into the crowd. While a deep anger starts to bubble up within me, I catch my daughter's anxious face and rein in my emotions. It's all right. You've practiced a lot. If you do just like you practiced at home, you'll win for sure. Mommy guarantees it. Our eyes meet, and I speak softly to her. I need to stay strong for her. She nods, slowly, digesting my words. After registering, I leave my daughter and enter the spectator area. Now all I can do is believe in her ability. I take a deep breath and wait for her contest to begin. Including my ex-husband's child, most of the young contestants were nervous and stumbled through their speeches. As for my daughter, even without parental bias, I thought she was by far the best, delivering her speech in fluent Spanish without hesitation. My prediction was accurate. She won the Spanish speech and debate contest, holding a large bouquet and with a medal around her neck. We leave the venue hand in hand. Next, we're going to celebrate with some steak, just as planned.
Abigail, wait up!
A loud voice chases after me from behind. I quickly shield my daughter behind me and turn around to face my ex-husband. His eyes are red-rimmed, as if he'd been crying. Peeking out from behind me, my daughter's medal catches his eye, and he looks at it enviously.
How can your kid win first place? There's no way a child raised by a high school grad could be so articulate.
Turns out, he's upset because his own child didn't place, while my daughter won the competition. He rants, assuming that my husband, my daughter, and I couldn't possibly speak Spanish. People leaving the venue glanced at him, puzzled by his outburst, but he seems oblivious.
Where did you enroll her? Or did you hire a tutor with whatever little you make?
We didn't enroll her in any classes, and we didn't hire a tutor, I reply plainly. His eyes widen in disbelief.
No way! You can barely speak Spanish yourself.
Did you forget about my job? His puzzled expression deepens. I work in an import-export office, where speaking some Spanish makes the job easier. Besides, my grandfather lives in Spain. I've been accustomed to Spanish since I was little. My daughter learned it naturally, talking with him. I stroke my daughter's head as she peeks out from behind me. I've conversed in Spanish with my grandfather ever since I can remember. I chose my line of work because it allowed me to use my Spanish skills. My daughter started speaking Spanish naturally because we've been video calling with her great-grandfather to show him how she's growing up. I've never forced her to learn Spanish. All my husband and I did was support our daughter. Follow your passion and you'll excel. As they say, my daughter has grown to converse with her native Spanish-speaking grandfather without needing a translator. My ex starts trembling as he listens to my explanation, his face flushed a deep red, boiling with humiliation. Losing to someone he had looked down on must have been a more significant blow to his ego than he had anticipated.
I can't believe this. I'm going to complain to the organizers. My child was unfairly judged.
In a fit of rage, my ex-husband stormed back into the venue, leaving our child behind. Not wanting to leave my child alone, I waited silently for him to return. Soon enough, security escorted him out of the building, gripping him by both arms, gritting his teeth. It was clear he wasn't thrilled that my daughter won. As he aggressively approached me, a woman's voice suddenly called out to him.
James, what a coincidence running into you here.
She wore a crisp pantsuit and had an event badge hanging around her neck. My ex-husband's anger cooled as his shoulders tensed up. I couldn't just walk away, so I stood there, keeping my daughter behind me, watching.
So, James, you have a kid. I heard you were single. Is this woman next to you your wife?
Caught off guard, I shook my head vehemently. No, he's my ex-husband.
Oh, so this child is yours and James's.
She eyed the boy standing next to my ex-husband with her piercing gaze. No, that's the son from the woman he married after divorcing me. Her eyes lit up. Sweating and looking pale, my ex-husband was clearly distressed. What happened next needs no explanation. Sensing impending chaos, I fled the scene. It turns out, after marrying a college-educated woman, he'd been having an affair with another educated woman involving in the Spanish speech and debate tournament. She quickly realized she was his side chick upon seeing him with a child. Naturally, the affair infuriated his well-educated wife. She took their child and went back to her parents' house the next day. Now, he's scrambling to pay child support, alimony for the divorce, and education loans. Word got around his office about how he had been serial dating women based on their educational backgrounds, forcing him to resign. As for my daughter, she later participated in the national Spanish speech competition. While she didn't win, her near-native language skills drew much attention, and her interest in Spanish only grew. With my current husband's support, I left my long-time job at a trading company. Now, I teach Spanish from home and assist my grandfather with translating novels.
My name is Harper, a 42-year-old housewife working part-time. My husband Keith is 48 and works for a company. We have an 18-year-old daughter, Sophia, who is a high school student. Though we have been married for nearly 20 years, there has been a persistent tense atmosphere for quite a while. Back when Sophia was little, the three of us used to go out and play together a lot. However, since Sophia became a high school student, Keith started going out by himself more frequently. He has completely stopped getting involved in Sophia's school, events, or club activities. I have to drive Sophia, who was part of the badminton club, to tournaments and practice matches far away, but no matter how much I ask Keith, he always brushes me off, saying, "I'm busy with work. Looking after the child is the mother's job, isn't it?" Sophia, too, is astonished at her father's behavior. Other kids' fathers are enthusiastically coming to support, but our dad doesn't seem to care. It seems that Sophia isn't particularly fond of Keith, who never helps out with child rearing. He barely helps out with housework, but he always has complaints. Even when my part-time job gets busy and I come home late, Keith never prepares dinner. What time do you think it is? I'm starving here! I work too, you know. You could at least prepare dinner. This way, we often end up arguing. Lately, Sophia has been helping with dinner preparations, which has been a great relief. The initial reason I started working part-time was because Keith asked me to. I had planned to start working when Sophia grew up to a certain extent, but Keith kept buying unnecessary things, so I started working again when Sophia was 1. Keith loves cars and is constantly buying new ones. He should buy a car within his earning capacity, but he can't do that. He is not high income, but he keeps buying expensive cars. Adding to that, Keith, who likes to show off, seems to often pay for his coworkers when they go drinking. I treated everyone again today. He comes home drunk and talks about it with a smug face. Recently, there seem to be fewer drinking parties, so he seems to not be treating others as much. Still, he is always complaining about not having enough money. He works for a company that does not pay well, and he spends money without thinking. Ideally, I wanted to save money for Sophia's education and for buying our own house. Now, saving money is out of the question, and we are barely getting by, day to day. Keith's salary disappears with monthly rent, food expenses, and educational expenses. Most of my part-time income is used for the payments on the luxury car that Keith bought. A large minivan, a hybrid car, which is too big for a 3-person family. He decided to buy it without considering Sophia's or my opinion. Before this minivan, we had a gas-guzzling giant SUV. I got angry several times because of the car's poor fuel efficiency. Why do you, who never go to the mountains or the sea, need to buy such a car with such large tires? I bought it because it's trendy now. It's okay even in heavy snow. We live in an area where it only snows about once every 5 years, so there was never a chance to use it in snowy conditions. When he bought the current minivan, he said, "This time it's a hybrid, so the fuel efficiency is good. Also, a lot of people can ride in a minivan." When Sophia was in junior high school, many of the parents of the badminton club members drove minivans. Sophia and I had a conversation about it. Indeed, a minivan can accommodate many people and even allow for changing clothes. It's nice. Our car is large, but the interior is cramped, isn't it? Perhaps my husband casually checks in on my conversation with our daughter, Sophia. And then there's my husband, who bought a sports car before the SUV. It was a childhood dream of mine. It's every man's fantasy. Can't you wait until Sophia grows up? This car's child seat is a pain. It's a car I can only drive now. We don't use the child seat every day, so it's okay. You might not mind since you won't be transporting Sophia, but it's hard for me. The 2-door car was difficult to use, and of course, the fuel economy was terrible. Sophia was still at an age where she needed a child seat or a baby seat, and getting in and out was difficult. If only my husband would consult me, but he decides on his own. He buys on impulse without thinking about the payments. I don't understand why he buys things he can't afford on his salary. In the end, I had to pay the loan with the money I earned from my part-time job. Every time, my hours at the part-time job get longer. When we bought the current minivan, my husband and I had a quarrel. Next time we buy a car, consult us too. You can't decide on your own. I should be the one to decide. I'm the one who drives it the most. You can decide, but at least let me know what kind of car it will be. That's all I ask. Okay, I understand. So next time I can decide if I consult with you first. At my husband's words, I started feeling anxious. You're not thinking of buying the next car already, are you? I don't know. I didn't say anything, did I? The word, I don't know, seemed unnatural. I'm paying almost all of the loans for the car you're driving with my part-time job earnings. I can't pay any more than this. I'm also paying for the down payment, my husband retorts, looking dissatisfied. It's not a down payment, it's the money from trading in the old car. Then it's the same as what I paid. It could be. My husband was overruled by me. About a month later, my husband brought up the topic, looking guilty. Actually, I bought a new car. I was so stunned that I didn't even feel angry. This time, it's an electric vehicle, so we don't need gasoline. With the current high gasoline prices, it's perfect. Electricity is expensive too. We don't have solar power. So are there any advantages to electric cars? It doesn't emit carbon dioxide, so it's good for the environment. I can't tell if he's just easily swayed by trends or if he's just doing what the car dealer tells him. It's too much. How much did you pay for it? A loan of $750 per month. I need your part-time job earnings again. If it's $750 a month, that's all of my part-time earnings. Do I have to work for your car? You'll be driving it too. Now that Sophia's club activities are over, I won't be using it. Now that our daughter, a high school senior, has retired from her club activities, she won't need the car anymore. I wanted to save my part-time earnings for her college education, but now my plan has been completely derailed. We need money for Sophia's college education too. Is it okay to buy such an expensive car? Are you okay? He asks me back. Sure enough, due to the recent incident, I started to harbor doubts towards my husband. Am I really okay living with this man? I am filled with uncertainty. He doesn't consider Sophia's college expenses or our retirement funds at all. I want to discuss it with someone, but my parents are no longer around. I don't want to worry Sophia, so I can't talk to her. At that moment, I remember a senior from work. He got divorced a few years ago and is now single-handedly raising 2 children. Despite being my junior by a couple of years, they perform better than other employees. I'm not considering a divorce yet, but I want to consult him. The next day during lunch, I had him listen to my story. After hearing my situation, the senior said, I had small children, and my wife didn't work, so I was able to make the decision quickly. I feel a bit better after talking, but honestly, I'm still unsure. Do you think you could live with Sophia just on your part-time pay? That's impossible. I can't make ends meet unless I'm a full-time employee. I thought so. We both fell silent. However, as I told my senior, I felt much better after just consulting. From then on, we talked about various things, considering my future life. After a while, my husband's new car was delivered. The smell of a new car is really great. Yeah. Why are you angry? Be happy. The new car is here. Good for you. You're no fun. Fine, I'll celebrate by myself. Saying that, my husband started drinking beer. You're taking it easy, aren't you? Say whatever you like. He seemed unusually pleased, probably from the joy. The next day, I had to work overtime and came home late. Sophia had prepared dinner, which was a great help. When I came home, my husband was again happily drinking beer. You're working late! Good job! I felt irritated at my husband, who was meddling with me. I have to work hard for your new car, don't I? Feeling annoyed, I made a sarcastic remark. Thanks for earning the extra money. If it's so bothersome, why don't you just stop the payments? I was angry that he'd say such a thing when I was working late, but I held back from complaining to my husband and decided to really stop the payments. The next day, I decided to withdraw all the money from the account used for the car loan. This means the next payment won't go through. I was looking forward to seeing what kind of face my husband would make. I managed to withdraw the money in time before the next due date, and a reminder notice arrived the next month. I hid the letter so my husband wouldn't find it. Of course, the reminder came again the following month, and the month after, but I was able to hide it successfully each time. Around the 4th month after stopping the payments, I received a different document. It was sent by certified mail, and I thought this was the final reminder. When my husband came home, I threw the packet with the document in it at him, saying, "Some important document arrived for you." In a panic, Keith unwrapped the package, shouting, What the hell? You haven't been making car payments for 3 months? It seemed the letter stated that the car was to be repossessed due to repeated failure to respond to payment reminders. He would now have to give up his beloved car. But you were the one who said, stop the payments. Well, that was just something I said in the heat of the moment when I was drunk. Who would really stop payments? I was so annoyed because you would tell me, thanks for earning some pocket money, while I was working so hard. Becoming more defiant, he started to say even worse things. You always complained every time I bought a car. I should be able to buy a car if I want to. I didn't complain about you buying a car. You can buy one, but you should pay for it yourself. Struck by my blow, Keith was at a loss for words. We're going to need money for Sophia's education soon. Think about the future. I was shaking as he listened to me, and finally, he snapped. If you can't listen to me, get out! We're getting a divorce! Hearing the word divorce made even me falter. Okay, I'll leave. Let's let Sophia decide what she wants to do. Before I finished speaking, Sophia emerged from her room. I'm obviously going with Mom. It's too much trouble to stay with a father who doesn't do anything. She had heard our argument and seemed to understand what was happening. Sophia, who had already prepared her luggage, surprised me. Well, I'll be leaving then. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later. I grabbed only the essentials and left the house. Hey, where are you going? Keith's voice suddenly took on a sad tone. Turning back, I said, we'll properly discuss the divorce process later. I don't need alimony, but you have to pay child support. We left the house, leaving Keith with his tearful face. Mom, you were so cool. Just as expected. But what are we going to do now? Don't worry, I had prepared for this, thinking it might happen. I had expected this to happen ever since Harper told me to stop paying the car loan. Also, I had about $3,000 from not paying the car loan payments for 4 months. We stayed in a motel for about 3 days, but I had already arranged for an apartment. We were able to move to the apartment on the 4th day after leaving the house. I'm sorry for making you live in a place like a motel. I wouldn't want to live there forever, but it was actually fun because we already had a place to move to. Sophia said cheerfully, which relieved me a little. It's going to be just the 2 of us from now on, but I'll do my best. I'll help with everything too. Let's do our best together. We had to go back to our old house to get the rest of our stuff. We also had to finalize the divorce. I contacted Keith before returning to the old house. I asked a lawyer who was recommended by a senior at work to accompany us because I was afraid that Keith might become violent if it was just Sophia and me. The lawyer was an expert in divorce cases and had helped the senior during his divorce. It was expensive, but we could afford it. We've also asked the lawyer to come. Even the appearance of a lawyer surprised Keith, who said, "You're really okay with getting a divorce? I won't forgive you if you come back and apologize later." He glared at me as he threatened me. I thought that this must be his true nature. It's okay, I won't say such things. Even if you, working part-time, leave this place, you won't be able to make a living. You don't have to worry about me. Just sign the divorce papers quickly. Fine, I'll sign it. Just shut up. I will take full child support. Considering your income... Looking at the child support calculation, Keith started shouting. Why the hell do I have to pay child support? I won't pay a single penny to a daughter who wants to leave home. Being told this, I felt grateful for having a lawyer. The lawyer convinced my husband that child support is not paid to me, but given to our daughter as a duty of a father. But there's still a chance that my husband won't pay the child support. Therefore, arrangements were made to deduct it from his salary if he doesn't pay. You're just a part-timer, but you've got a lawyer? How prestigious. Where did you get that money? I forgot to tell you, I was made a full-time employee. I'm making about double my old salary, so don't worry. Keith seemed speechless. Honestly, becoming a full-time employee gave me the courage to finally get a divorce. And as a full-time employee, I could also get a housing allowance, so I could afford to rent an apartment. Due to advice from my senior colleague, I had been looking for an apartment I could move into immediately. The decision to bring a lawyer to the discussions was also advice from my senior. And sure enough, the child support from my husband stopped coming in almost immediately. It was good to have a lawyer come with me and set up the procedure to deduct it from his salary. Despite all the chaos, Sophia was able to get into her first choice university. I have to work even harder for her tuition. Working for a car loan that I don't even use is different. This has a sense of purpose. From now on, for Sophia's sake, I plan to live happily together.
My name is Alexander. I have a brother, but we never really got along. Year after year, my brother continued to harass me. I tried to connect with him, but instead of bridging the gap, it only widened. Then, one day, my paternal grandfather, who had taken me in, made a significant announcement, and everything began to change dramatically. I never thought something like this would happen. Being a person with ordinary thoughts, I never imagined this situation. When I was young, my parents died in an accident. After that, my paternal grandfather took care of me. He's a strict person, feared even by our family members. Now, our family consists of my grandfather, my brother, and me. My brother Benjamin has always been proud. Since we were little, he's called me dull or slow, and that hasn't changed even now. In fact, it's only gotten worse. One day, as I was preparing for college entrance exams, he said,
Alexander, I heard you never managed to be the top of your high school class. You only managed to be average. Aren't you ashamed? In contrast, I've always been at the top of my class. Not just once or twice, I've become a diplomat after excelling in college. Our family's honor is practically guaranteed, understand? I'm an elite. From now on, you must call me sir. Got it? Benjamin, will you stop this nonsense? As a diplomat, you should behave accordingly. You're not acting like this outside, are you? Not at all. Only with him. I wonder, you've always been too arrogant. You'll learn a painful lesson someday. Don't worry, I'm excellent. So that one happened. Are you getting old, grandfather?
I thought this behavior was unthinkable from the brother I knew as a child. Even I thought that was rude. I glanced at my grandfather. I knew that after scolding my brother, he always looked at him with a bitter face. Time passed and I graduated from my desired university without any delays and got a job at the city hall. It's still a tough economy, but I thought that working for the city hall would provide some stability. However, my brother's taunts only increased. I'm home.
Hey, you're back?
He said, looking at me with contempt. I wanted to avoid this kind of welcome right at the entrance. Usually it would end there, but this time was different. As I was about to enter the house, my brother came close and whispered in my ear,
You should just disappear.
What?
You're a disgrace to our family since you can't get ahead. Better leave before you become an embarrassment, okay? What are you doing there? Nothing at all. Now wash your hands quickly. You're so dull.
He said and left. You're a disgrace to our family, so disappear? Finally, he said it. He had always been harsh, but now he looked down on me like this. When we were really young, he was a bit mean but never neglected me. Our mother raised us equally and our father taught us how to be men from that time. Raised by such parents and being blood-related siblings, it only makes me feel sadder. Is it because I've grown tired of being ordinary? Has power changed him? Or is it because of our prestigious family background? In any case, if our father and mother could see my brother now, I wonder how sad their eyes would be. Perhaps my feelings showed on my face for now. My grandfather approached and put his hand on my shoulder.
Don't cry. It's truly shameful to cry over something like this. Yes, I'm sorry. It's fine. But it's time to make things clear. Just like it happened with me in the past. It's a strange fate that it's happening again in my grandson's generation.
He muttered to himself and walked away. At that moment, my grandfather's face wasn't the usual bitter one, but sharp, dignified, and clearly exuding a sense that he had made some decision. That's how it seemed to me. Time passed, and this day was my grandfather's birthday. Usually, relatives would gather for a quiet celebration, but for some reason, no one was there this time. Only my brother and I were waiting for our grandfather, the guest of honor, in the living room. But there was nothing on the table, not even the usual birthday cake. making it a lonely scene for a birthday. I had prepared a present for my grandfather, but it didn't seem like the right time to give it.
Don't you think it's strange? What? Nothing. I was foolish to ask.
There was a click and the door opened. When my grandfather entered, we straightened up and quietly looked at him. I was tense, sensing a different atmosphere. Glancing at my brother, I saw a faint smile on his lips. It was as if he knew something. When my grandfather took his seat, he took a deep breath.
You've probably already noticed today is my birthday, but I haven't invited anyone. There's more important news. Important news, you say? Yes, it's about taking over the family business.
At that moment, my brother's eyes widened, his smile still on his face. It was as if he was saying, I've been waiting for this. As for me, I was just a little tense, thinking the family business will probably be handed over to my brother. If that happened, my brother would undoubtedly cast me aside. Thinking that way made me feel heavy.
Finally, I've been waiting. So when do we start the process? Even tomorrow's fine. You are too eager. I haven't told anyone yet. What are you saying? It's obvious, isn't it? The family business will be inherited by me, the eldest son. Am I wrong? Yes, you are wrong.
My brother stared at my grandfather, who answered sharply, his smile frozen on his face. Unable to accept what was said, my brother coughed, placed both hands on the table, and leaned forward, eyes wide open.
I didn't hear you clearly. Could you say that again? You are unfortunate to have sudden hearing loss at your age, Benjamin. Fine. I'll say it clearly as you wish. You will not inherit the family business. It will be Alexander.
Unbelievable! I never thought I would inherit the family headship. I couldn't hide my surprise, though not as much as my brother.
Alexander, you will carry on the next generation. We'll handle the inheritance procedures later, that's all. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. This has to be a lie.
My brother's scream echoes through the room.
Why not me? Why not me? I have more ability and fame than him. I have connections with influential people. I'm a diplomat in my current job, and he's just a city hall employee. I don't fall short to this disgraceful failure in any way. Do you understand that, huh? Indeed, in terms of ability and education, that may be true. But to say that you surpass Alexander in every way is an overestimation of yourself. Benjamin, you don't understand others' pain at all. What? What does that have to do with anything? The world is survival of the fittest, a society of disparities, capitalism. Only the strong survive and the weak become fodder for the strong. They talk about love and equality, but those are all illusions. In the end, power and money are everything.
My brother shouts his beliefs in a rage, and my grandfather responds with hearty laughter. I can see my brother's eyes trembling with anger at my grandfather's reaction.
Is that really so? I don't think so. Most people who say that and go their own way end up lonely. I can't let someone who's trapped by short-sighted desires and their own greed inherit the family headship. I chose Alexander because he has compassion.
Compassion, you say?
Yes, as my father used to say, a leader must be someone with ability and respected by others. Ability can be achieved alone through study or anything else, but whether or not you are respected by others is determined by them. How's your work environment now, Alexander? Yes, under the guidance of my seniors, I still have areas to improve after about 6 months, but recently I've been assigned to mentor a new junior colleague. My seniors and bosses say Alexander is good at teaching others, so I'm learning and teaching my junior colleagues what I can. Even though you're still learning, you're in a position to teach others. That's because you have been diligent in your duties, and others see qualities in you that they respect. It may go without saying, but don't forget that heart, okay? And what about you, Benjamin? Hey, oh man, who cares about that? Take back what you said earlier and say, I will pass the family business to Benjamin. Silence, boy.
My grandfather's eyes sharpened, and with one word, he silenced my brother, who complained loudly. I also felt a chill witnessing my grandfather's intimidation for the first time. My grandfather stood up quietly and confronted my brother. My brother, who had lost his earlier bravado, cowered like a rabbit facing a predator, unable to take his eyes off my grandfather.
Benjamin, Your arrogance has gone too far. I have overlooked it, hoping that one day you'll understand, but no more. You're a disgrace to our family. From this moment, I sever our family ties. Pack your bags and leave at once. Never show your ugly face to us again."
My brother, who had been disowned, clenched his teeth, his eyelids twitching violently, and swallowed the words that seemed to overflow from his throat as he ran out of the room. Tears were in his eyes.
Now that the noisy one is gone, let's get back to our conversation. Before that, please take this.
I stand up and hand my grandfather a present.
Happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful year ahead.
My grandfather looks a little surprised as he takes the present and carefully unwraps it.
Is this a pocket watch? Yes, there's a space inside the cover for a photo. I was hoping we could take a group picture today and later put a small version of it in there. But it seems that won't be possible. Ha ha ha. If we did that, the faces would be too small for me to see. Let's save that for future enjoyment. Thank you, Alexander.
My grandfather says this with a smile, but his expression quickly turns serious again.
Be prepared, Alexander. Things are about to get much tougher. Please, go easy on me. That's not an option.
My grandfather says this with a mischievous grin, like a child playing a prank. From that day on, my life changes dramatically. After resigning from my job, I spent every day learning the manners and etiquette befitting a prestigious family, studying hard to meet the expectations. My grandfather, sometimes stern, sometimes encouraging, truly seems great, and I come to respect him as a parent. I spent almost a year devoted to my studies, and thanks to my efforts, I'm able to attend upper-class parties. The nervousness I felt was probably the most intense in my life, but I think I was able to overcome it with the confidence and results of my daily efforts. Even after that, a candidate for my marriage has decided to ensure the heir. I tightened my resolve once again, realizing that things won't settle down for a while. In the midst of all this, I hear rumors about my brother who left home. Apparently, he's working hard overseas as a diplomat. Knowing my action-oriented brother, I think he must be handling his job skillfully. I hope he will live his future by switching his mindset, keeping in mind what my grandfather pointed out. Since hearing the rumors about my brother, I sometimes wonder how he's doing. What he did to me hurt a lot, and I hated it, but I honestly didn't wish for such a farewell. My brother may not feel the same way, but Benjamin was my brother and family. My grandfather told me to forget, but I couldn't simply discard my feelings or be so detached. But now, unlike before, I am in a position of responsibility, and I don't wish to call him back. I have a duty to protect the pride of the prestigious family and the new family I have built. My child is now 5 years old, running around more energetically, growing up healthy and lively. My wife stands by my side, never losing her warm kindness, and together we are raising our child as a support for each other. And when our child grows even bigger and matures into a fine person, the position my grandfather held will come to me. My grandfather now enjoys his leisure time, watching over us, and has declared that he would interfere with how my wife and I raise our child. In other words, it's a generational change. My path as the new leader is still ahead, and it's truly exciting. On a side note, it seems that my grandfather has put a photo of his grandchild in the pocket watch I gave him for his birthday, and he smiles every time he looks at it. I hope you're looking forward to my growth as well, my great-grandfather.
My name is Emily. I'm 45 and currently dieting for Thanksgiving. Why? Because last year, I accidentally stored about 7 pounds of turkey fat on my own body. If I lose 7 pounds now, I can afford to gain it back during Thanksgiving, right? What? That's not how it works? Oh well, I tried. From Thanksgiving to Christmas, there's just too much good food. I'll probably even buy myself some Valentine's chocolate soon. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm set to gain weight after this year. Anyway, today I want to share a winter memory of mine. I hope you'll listen. It happened when I was 25. I had decided to marry my boyfriend Richard, who I'd been dating for several years. I introduced him to my dad, James, and my mom, Linda. You know, the typical meet the parents situation. My parents liked Richard, and everything seemed to be going smoothly until a problem arose. My older sister, Susan, who's 2 years older than me, came home from work and was instantly captivated by Richard. It's strange, but sisters can just tell what the other is thinking. Susan had fallen for Richard at first sight. I hoped I was wrong, but Susan blushed when Richard shook her hand. She was always looking up at him when she talked. I thought it was inappropriate for her to act that way towards my boyfriend, but I guess she couldn't help it. I thought she'd eventually put a stop to it, so I ignored it. But after Richard left, Susan cornered me, looking ridiculous in just a bath towel, and said, "You should call off the wedding." She kept bad-mouthing Richard, saying he was a player and that I could do better. But she had no evidence. When I asked her why she thought he was a player, she said, "It's a woman's intuition." Susan has never had a boyfriend. How could I trust the intuition of someone with no experience in relationships? In that case, I believe in Richard's personality, which I have seen with my own eyes for several years. So I brushed off Susan's warning and didn't take it seriously. Richard started visiting my parents' house more often. He said he wanted to get along with my family, so I invited him over without a second thought. My parents were happy, and I had no reason to object to my future husband getting along with them. Everything seemed fine, but Susan was trying to build a good relationship with Richard in a different way. According to Richard, Susan would grab his arm when I wasn't around, press her chest against him, and ask, "Don't you think Emily is childish?" She even tried to show him under her skirt by pretending to trip. Richard laughed it off, saying it was so obvious it was funny. If he had taken her seriously, I would have been very upset. But Susan mistook Richard's politeness for interest and kept making advances. Initially, it was love at first sight, but the fact that Richard had a stable job in a decent company also seemed to attract her. She was not going to give up on a man who was handsome, capable, and guaranteed a stable future. My parents, who should have seen Susan's inappropriate behavior, said nothing. Actually, they've always let Susan get away with anything. To be honest, Susan has always been incompetent. If you ask her to heat up some food, she'll melt a non-microwave safe plastic plate in the microwave. She's bad at studying and sports, especially swimming. She always found excuses to skip swimming classes, like injuring her foot or having a skin rash. She's bad at studying, sports, and even household chores. To be honest, Susan isn't exactly a beauty. But my parents doted on her just because she's the eldest daughter, and instructed me to secretly support her. Yes, secretly. I shouldn't outshine her. I should make her look good. It's unfair, considering we're sisters. Well, maybe my parents felt that Susan was a poor child who can't do anything, and that's why they wanted to protect her. Ironically, I was good at almost everything. I could quickly learn and master new skills. Maybe that made me less endearing to adults. So I even managed to complete the Make Susan Look Good mission effortlessly. There was a time when I pretended to be incompetent outside the house. But after I got through puberty, I started to rebel against my parents, thinking, if I keep this up, I'll fail my exams. If I had continued to listen to my parents, I might have actually become a child who can't do anything. This rebellion made Susan somewhat resentful of me. But we were never on bad terms. We talked normally, and I even gave her advice sometimes. Despite the imbalance of my parents' affection and Susan's hostility, we were still a pretty normal family. But that balance was shattered because Richard didn't reciprocate Susan's feelings. "You can't allow this marriage with Richard." The night before the wedding, Susan told our parents. "Come on, Susan, you will get married soon too. my parents said. Yes, Susan. That's not the point. I want to get married before her. She's too young. But the wedding is tomorrow. Aren't you on my side, Mom? That's not true. I was quietly listening to this disastrous conversation in the hallway. Wait for my sister, who has no romantic experience, to get married first? If I did that, I'd grow old in no time. What on earth is Susan talking about? I thought she'd calm down after venting, but then I heard my dad say, Fine, your mom and I will skip the wedding tomorrow. Will that make you happy, Susan? What? I couldn't believe my ears. My mom agreed, practically begging Susan for forgiveness. This was beyond doting. It was more like worship. At this point, it's not at the level of doting. But Susan sighed and said, Fine, I'll settle for that. I at least want to make sure your marriage isn't recognized by the family. She really didn't want me to marry Richard, probably because she was in love with him. I couldn't believe it. Because of Susan's unrequited love, my parents were planning to skip my wedding. So the wedding day arrived. Despite it being a sunny day, I was sleep deprived. Not because I was too excited about the wedding, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation between Susan and my parents. I'll never forget the smug smile on Susan's face when my parents officially told me they wouldn't attend. At the venue, I had to tell Richard and my in-laws that my family would be absent. I'm sorry, my sister opposed this marriage, so my family won't be attending, I said. I've never felt so humiliated. Not showing up to your own daughter's wedding. Even my in-laws couldn't believe it. Upon hearing my story, my in-laws fell silent for a moment. Just when I thought the mood couldn't get any heavier on this special day, my mother-in-law Karen took my hand. Soon after, my father-in-law William placed his hand on top of ours. You do have a family here, you know. Don't forget that. Let's not make today a sad one. Come on, smile. Tears filled my eyes at Karen's gentle smile and the warmth of William's hand. Hey, Emily. I'm your husband, remember? Don't say you're missing family, Richard said, patting my head gently. Don't cry, bride. Don't cry, my in-laws and Richard hurriedly said. Even as they laughed. You'll ruin your makeup. Amidst all this, Karen looked at me in the eyes and said, Emily, I know it's tough with your parents, but this is a good start to your new life. Begin your own family from now on. Karen hugged me tightly, as if to make up for my parents' absence. Richard and William joined in. Everything will be okay, just like Karen said. This is a good start to my new life. I vowed to build my own happy family, and that day, I married Richard without a hitch. Fast forward 15 years. We have one daughter and 2 sons. Our responsible and capable daughter, Patricia, is a lifesaver, taking care of our rambunctious sons, Robert and Thomas. But man, the way she yells, enough already! She's just like me. Well, it's gone. Life was going smoothly. Richard's job was going well, and we'd bought a house. But then, trouble showed up. My dad, Mom, and Susan. We'd been estranged since the wedding, and hadn't given them our new address. Somehow they found us and showed up at our house. Naturally, my first words weren't, "Long time no see," but, "What are you doing here?" "We have a favor to ask Emily," said Susan. Even my parents chimed in. "Only you can help us." What's going on? What could they possibly want after 15 years? As I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to hear more, Mom blurted out, "Give Richard to Susan." What? Even Richard, who had come to see what was going on, was stunned. Wait, what? How did we get to give Richard to Susan? I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. Both Dad and Mom looked uncomfortable, while Susan seemed oddly smug. Susan is still single. She's turning 42 this year. So what? I was even more confused by Dad's words, and so was Richard. Actually, Susan recently lost her job because her company went bankrupt. Oh, that's tough. I think you can understand why we're worried about Susan's future. She's your sister, after all. I kept quiet, even though I thought, not really, while looking into my parents' eyes. What are they going to say next? I was more curious than annoyed by Dad's words, so I didn't interrupt. Susan has always had a crush on Richard, and she's still single. You've already enjoyed your married life with Richard, right? Please let your sister have him for the rest of her life. What? I looked at Richard, who seemed as stunned as I was, as if his soul had left his body. Ignoring our reactions, my parents pleaded, and Susan remained smug. From her demeanor, it seemed Susan was certain she'd get Richard. Well, our parents always gave her what she wanted. So maybe she's just delusional, but this is too much. As I was pondering this, Richard tugged at me. It seems that the soul has returned. Hey, isn't this an opportunity? You mean that? Yeah, this is exactly like that joke you made when you were drunk. Should we go for it? We quickly turned back to face Susan and our parents. Do you really like Richard that much? Caught off guard by my question, Susan stammered. Yes. I've always loved him. Really, really loved him. Wow, that's some strong emotion. You've loved him for 15 years, even though he's someone else's husband? Yes, it's been hard, thinking of you two together. We were doing so well. Trying to keep a straight face was hard, given Susan's confident tone, but Richard and I managed. You win, if you feel that strongly. I'll step aside. My parents were the ones surprised by my words. Really? But you love Richard too, Mom exclaimed. Well, the truth is, I've always been in love with Susan. Richard chimed in. Susan's face turned bright red. I knew it! I knew you loved me! You never minded when I touched you. And the way you looked at me was so loving, we're finally going to be together. I had to hold back my laughter. Hey, Richard pretending to look down and wipe away tears isn't hiding the fact that you're shaking with laughter. Hold it in. Let's spend the rest of our lives together, Richard. She must have whispered those words to her imaginary Richard countless times over the past 15 years. I'm happy, Susan. Support me from now on. Richard smiled. Of course. Great. I'll quit my job then. What? Susan's flushed cheeks suddenly paled. I want to be with you every second, so I'll quit my job and stay by your side. What? I won't even go outside. I'd love it if you could accompany me to the bathroom. I'll watch you do housework all day. As Richard spoke with a grin, Susan froze, then began to panic. My parents also started to lose their composure. Wait, I'm not working either, so that's going to be a problem. Why would it be a problem? We'll be together, so what's there to fear? Even if we don't have money, we'll be happy, right? No, but we have monthly bills like insurance to pay. This isn't some fairy tale. So, you can't love me if we don't have money? That's not what I'm saying. Susan's eyes clearly dart around. I quickly said, Well, Richard, when we divorce, make sure you pay me a hefty settlement, okay? Don't worry, Susan and your parents will cover it. Richard smiled. My parents turned pale and exchanged glances. Actually, Susan, taking your sister's husband is just wrong. Yeah, Susan, that's crossing a line. The desperation they had shown earlier had vanished. My parents quickly changed their tune.
What? You promised I'd get Richard. You're not acting like parents.
Well, Susan, this is a different matter.
Shut up! Whose side are you on?
Susan became hysterical, pulling Mom's hair while Dad tried to intervene. What a sad scene. Richard and I watched for a moment before he finally spoke. Excuse me for being blunt. Susan and our parents all look at Richard. But I'm not attracted to Susan at all. I've been polite because she's Emily's sister, but I really don't like women who make advances on me. It's a turnoff, completely. And the assumption that I like Susan is also a bit. I can't deal with women who jump to conclusions. Susan and my parents were speechless.
So what was that all about, Richard?
Could you not call someone else's husband by his first name? Richard doesn't like Susan. We're happily married with kids, I said, restraining Susan, who approached my husband with a pale face.
You tricked me.
Why would you think a man you haven't heard from in 15 years would be interested in you? Are you that naive? Susan's face turned red as she held back tears. If you were so charming, maybe, but who would want an unemployed woman living off her parents? You can't even do housework, can you? With those skills, even if you got married, you'd be dumped. I hit her with the hard truth, and Richard laughed in the background. Apparently, I struck a nerve. Susan couldn't stop crying. My parents tried to comfort her, but looked troubled. So, that's that. We're not giving up Richard. Give it up, Susan. Susan broke down in tears. That's what's embarrassing about her. No growth at all. Don't contact us again. We're cutting ties. And don't expect any help from us if you're unemployed. With that, I closed the front door. When our kids asked, "What happened?" I said, "Seems like a wild animal was making noises, probably looking for food." Robert wanted to go see, but I stopped him. We could still hear Susan's wailing from outside. 5 years later, Susan is still single. She managed to find a job but got fired for making advances on younger coworkers and married men. She's been banned from dating events for her reckless behavior. I'm pretty sure she'll stay single for the rest of her life. No doubt about it. Even my parents, who are retired, are working part-time jobs to save money for her. They probably realize they can't rely on Susan for their future care. Well, they've spoiled Susan so much, they might as well work themselves to the bone to make her realize the consequences. As for me, thanks to my hard-working husband and well-behaved kids, I don't have to worry about tuition or work. I mostly take care of the house and enjoy my days. Well, maybe if I had a job, I could offset the holiday overeating. Or maybe not. My teenage daughter, Patricia, keeps saying she wants to diet, even though she's perfectly slim. I'm doing my best to discourage her. Save that for when you're as wide as Mom, I tell her. My sons, Robert and Thomas, have taken up dancing, and even performed at a local event recently. They've won some awards, and are determined to make it big, like the Jabberwockies. My in-laws visit us regularly, and often join us for meals. I say in-laws here, but honestly, I consider them my real mom and dad. They've even suggested going on a resort vacation together during the kids' spring break. I hope they stay healthy and live long enough to enjoy many more days with us. Sure, there were the challenges before we got married, but ever since, it's been nothing but happiness. I finally feel like I have a real family.